been a really long time that we've been planning this, and I'm absolutely like I'm so excited with also Chris. Also, Chris, it is also pre-season now, or even just kind of your break. You're having that kind of time to relax. How's that been?
Yeah, I think well, firstly, thanks for having me on. It's great to be invited on, and yeah, look, the break's been fantastic. It's very much needed. I think it's we all love the game and we all love football, but it takes every sort of bit out of you. So that this break's been very much kind of earned and needed. But yeah, I sort of came back to it beginning of this week, and we start pre-season next week. So I'm hungry and ready now for the next challenge that we've got in front of us.
I think when I've talked to a lot of people in obviously the industry the last few years, I've had obviously like a podcast kind of apart from this, and one of the things they've always mentioned was how important that kind of rest period is. You know how intense the in season mode is. We saw obviously in men's and also women's football how intense it can be. So that's where I wanted to come across with that. How important this rest break is to recharge, to rejuvenate. And then obviously pre-season is in the next few weeks then.
Yeah, I think we had obviously we had a really good season last year as a club. We the work that goes in is massive regardless, but especially when you're working towards something, and we were really lucky to be in a position to be challenging for a title and then obviously achieving that. And the last 6 7 weeks of the season, on one hand flew by. Probably the quickest at that time of my life has ever kind of gone, but on the flip side of that, it's taken years and months worth of sort of toll to get to that point, and it very much comes out, and you perhaps don't realize how little you're sleeping or how much effort and time you're putting into it until that has been achieved. And sort of that first night after we'd achieved it was probably the first time I'd had a proper good night's sleep in a long time. So all of that does catch up with you. It's what we're in the game for. So yeah, as I said, it's been a really sort of valued and necessary break. And probably the first one I've personally had for a few years along this way, my own personal journey and various sort of challenges that have been along the way. So hopefully sets up a lot of energy and a lot of sort of opportunity for me to well, obviously recharge, but then use that again into the new season. So yeah, it's been hopefully very valuable.
Yeah, and for everybody, if anyone who doesn't know, obviously you're at Hull City at the moment, Hull City Ladies. You're manager. You're also director of women and girls football, which is also a major role to take, as well as being. I mean, I can imagine being head coach. That's a big role in itself. But to take on sort of that other role as well, obviously we'll get into that as we kind of want to talk to you about that and how you manage both of those. But obviously, it beyond the pitch, our main thing is about being a media outlet for women's football. And I think kind of the best place to start with this discussion really is kind of, have you always been drawn to women's football in general? Sort of, is that something you wanted to work in? Kind of what was the reason for sort of starting this role in women's football, and kind of, yeah, what drew you to the job and specifically, and what do you enjoy about working in women's football?
A couple of bits to unpack there. I think I wasn't drawn to it as in like a target. I didn't look at women's football and sort of target that as my entry route into the game. It very much just came about organically. I wasn't blessed with having an amazing career. In fact, I didn't have any sort of career in the game. The levels I was competing at anyway were sort of taken away from me through sort of injury and then opportunity after I went off to university. And then but I loved the game. I was sort of really passionate about potentially getting into the media side of it, but I don't quite have those skills and that sort of side of it. So I went along to an event and about getting into coaching. Loved it, loved every second of it. I was useless at it, but I loved every second of it. And I had a really good kind of mentor along that journey who just kind of said, "Look, go away, practice, just keep going because you've got some skill set there." And then just ended up falling into a position where I was coaching every age group imaginable, all hours of the day, just to, on less than minimum wage, just to try and earn some money from doing it to live. And I sort of sacrificed careers and things to do that. And then, yeah, just sort of an opportunity, my first opportunity in the women's game came at Crewe Alexandra, and working with their under 18s. I was only there for a couple of months before I moved away anyway, but it set that it set that tone, and I loved it. Loved it as I love all parts of the game. And that just probably opened the gateway for me whenever other opportunities came along. They'd seen that I'd got experience in the women's game, and that's the path that I've ended up progressing down and loving and engaging with, sort of 100% really.
Chris, I just want to touch on that sort of first thing at Crewe Alexandra, and when you walked into that, what did you find from sort of behind the scenes, and at the lower echelons of the women's football pyramid, if you will, like what kind of did you find, and did it sort of surprise you in any ways, sort of the challenges that grassroots football may, that you have now come to sort of face?
Did it surprise me? Probably not, because like I said, I'd done it wasn't my first step into the game, so I was doing all the hard yards, and stuff I still have to do, carrying more footballs than I've got room in my car and stuff, and working out what players are available, and again, all different age groups. I think where I was really lucky with Crewe is it was run at the time by an amazing coach, a guy called Nick Pearce, who he's gone on and been assistant manager at Burnley, and he's worked at Manchester United and his various different roles from there. And whilst he was young himself at that point, he had an amazing outlook on it, and really tried to professionalise. So I think at the time they were maybe competing at tier 6, but it was a fantastic setup regardless. And that just gave me a good outlet to recognise that for myself personally, I didn't want to jump around the grassroots game. I was in the game to try and create a career for myself and a pathway for myself, and that was a fantastic first step. So then when I took that, moving abroad or came back to England and took on roles, I understood what the bare minimum of a professionalised outlet looked like, and I think that then put me in good stead because of my personality and maybe some of the skills I do or don't have, but people then really liked that. So even though I don't know Nick really well at all, but he's someone that's always stuck in my head, and sort of he set that sort of initial bar for me, which helped a lot. So that's probably answers that one.
I really want to touch on, I think, your kind of personal kind of background there about when you said that you didn't have a target to really go into women's football. I think everybody, even here, I think it was never really kind of a natural thing because of the media attention really did really cover it. And it's only been in the last few years, obviously, with my personal story that I watch, obviously the Euros, or I watched the World Cup, and I watched the Lionesses. And then obviously my team, Man United, when they didn't have a women's team until about 2000 and also 18, I think. So, it's very new. I just want to touch on your background. When I was also doing a bit of research about you, I was a bit surprised to learn that you're also like a math teacher. You're a math. So how's that gone? How's that worked? You've been a football coach. That's been your background, but then you also math, was a learning teacher. You worked as also a math lecturer. Can you talk to us a bit about that then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd use them terms really loosely. Look, in terms of education-wise, I could have followed a very different route. Probably football and the sports industry is the more out there of these things for me personally. If you look at my background, for those that maybe knew me growing up, academics is something that I was lucky that I found relatively easy, but never really cared for, if I'm honest with you. I went off to university to do a history degree. Never should have done that, and that's not against people that do it, but it wasn't me. And I got 12 months into that, and my dad fell really ill, and he was kind of the central part of our lives. He ran his own business. It was sort of massive from that point. And it was in that moment that I really realised, particularly in the years that followed, as he was really ill, and then unfortunately died a little bit later on. And for me, it was, I'm not here to pursue just a career, and obviously I wouldn't be sat here talking to you now, but I'd probably be a lot richer. I'd probably be a lot more stable in my life. I'd probably be able to provide a lot better for my family, and maybe have achieved other things, but that wasn't my passion. So things like teaching maths, I've done other little jobs. I've done every job under the sun, but they've always been in support of football, because once I made that decision, I sacrificed the idea of careers elsewhere, turned down some big job offers, and yeah, again, some amazing opportunities to go and perhaps follow things like my friends have done, and live in London, or move abroad. But football has been the thing that I've, perhaps stupidly, but I've wanted to commit everything to. And so all these other jobs have just kind of, I found whatever job I can do that fits the program to make sure I'm available every evening in the week and every weekend. And that's where that came about, really.
I think lots of sort of people, myself included, will resonate with that idea of starting off somewhere. And, I did a politics degree, and I just could have gone in straight away into a job after that. And I spent the last year, actually, rather than going straight into a job when everyone else who was on my course did, sort of saying, actually, this is a major risk. I'm going to spend this year trying to get into the football industry. That's even the women's football industry nowadays, it's growing, and everybody wants to sort of get into that area. And you take that risk because it's something that you're passionate about. And I know so many people that are listening to this, even people within our team, and they will really resonate with what you're saying, and they'll feel that same connection to football. And you have to take that risk and throw yourself in the deep end to do something that you're passionate about, because that is what it is about at the end of the day. And also, in terms of like what we're doing with sort of beyond the pitch, there'll be plenty of people who will look at like a role that you're doing and sort of want to get to that point, and maybe want to sort of potentially be sort of a director in women's football, sort of manage, coach. In terms of like day to day, sort of what the job role looks like, if you could sort of describe that to somebody, what would you say?
What a really good question. I probably couldn't describe what day to day looks like, because every day is completely different. I think the one continuity I have is the game, and football, and I'm really lucky that I get to plan and deliver coaching sessions, in all the roles that I do. So obviously Hull City's as the manager, and that other role with the director of football is sort of a key part of my life. I also work where I'm talking to you now from. I also work at a college in the area called Bishop Burton College, and I run their women's football program as well. So I'm really lucky that I get to do football as a full-time sort of profession for me, and I get to be out on the pitch and coach. That's where my passion lies. That's where I really enjoy it. And that's, as ridiculous as it sounds, it might be the same for those that are journalists or whatever. And it's that comfort in doing the thing that you love, and whether that's writing or reading, or for me, coaching, being out on the pitch. I think all the other elements, and I think with the growth of the game in the last few years, that the biggest challenge has been dealing with that growth, whether that is the growing fan numbers that we've got coming through the door, the growing media attention, the expectations. The FA Women's National League themselves have set like minimum standards in place. As a football club, we can't just turn up and have some guy leading a team and a group of players and just hope to compete. You've got to have everything right and in place. So all those sort of behind the scene things are the bits that probably take up the most time. And it's brilliant because it's varied and it's difficult, and we all love a challenge. But in terms of my role, and I identify as a first team manager and a head coach, at least you get that continuity of coaching and just being out on the grass, which is probably the most important thing.
You sort of touched on it there about sort of the rules, the prim and proper stuff, the standards that are coming in and things. And in both your roles and all your experiences, you have a duty of care to players, as players, but also as people. And we hear these stories about grassroots players having to juggle 3-4 jobs, etc., while they're playing. And what sort of your approach to these players as people? Because even things like the Thornaby FC situation, and you're hearing Reading also quite recently that their women's team may not exist. I'm guessing you probably don't have that fear, even though you're quite lower down. But sort of what's your sort of the way you look after players is what I'm trying to say, basically.
It's a really good question, because they are people. They play football after. They play football as a part of their life. Now, there's two sides of it, and I'm really open and honest from the very start of meeting players. I will treat you like professionals. I will fight with whatever budgets we get. I will fight with club. I will fight with everything to make sure you get the absolute best that I can give you. And what I ask back is, in the moments that you are available, you give me everything you've got. But I think the key line and all that is the moments you can give me. So we've got players who are parents. We've got players who are in the police. We've got players whose jobs are, earning them 50 times what football will ever give them at this point in their career now. And their commitments and their priorities are elsewhere. Now, the fact that they commit and play football is because they love it, and it is a priority then because they love something. And you've got to remember, a large number of the girls in our team played when there was their mum and dad and a dog coming to watch, and that was even at senior first team level, because just no one cared, if we're going to use that sort of in quotation marks. But these players, these girls, these people, they care and they're passionate and they love what they're doing. And, to see last year us getting bigger average attendances, and to see us then going on and being able to achieve things and win and, be successful, they recognise that there's that commitment and that sacrifice as well. So it is a two-way thing. My job is player care, and, we're trying to transition as a football club towards a more professional model. Or a more full-time model. I'd like to think we're quite professional as it is, but that doesn't happen overnight. And I would cut off some amazing people if I made the decision to do that tomorrow, because they can't commit to that. So I've got to make these decisions right and well. And I think some clubs out there have done it brilliantly, and some clubs haven't. And there's some fantastic football clubs that I respect fully, but when they've made that transition, they haven't done it very well, and they've lost the people. And that's something that we're really keen to make sure doesn't happen, because that's what this club's built on.
That I just always want to add there, I think what you mentioned about how they have the outside work, but they really love the game, that, and that's why they play the game. I think where men's football in the last few years, you touch on the clubs with the bigger money, or the leagues and the organisations that are in there, a lot of the players, maybe it's lost its way, it's actually lost its purpose, and it's kind of lost its kind of identity. I think why women's football's done so well is that people can really embrace the fact that they're there for a reason. They really care, and it's really genuine. They really love the game for what it is. Where do you see, and I know this is a vague question, but I just want to hear your thoughts. Where do you see in 10 years' time this really women's football going?
I think that, it's difficult to answer, because 10 years ago when I first entered football and the women's game, could I have predicted it to have been where it is now? Probably not, but I think we all hoped it would. I think I've got two sides to the coin, really. I manage an independent women's football club. Everything we do as us, despite the name being similar to a men's team. We've got no link. And I love that we do that. I love that at the moment. That's not to say that in the future it wouldn't be amazing to join or not, but we have that autonomy. We can deliver what's best for women and female players. And we do have the players as women at the heart of what we do. I think my concern about the growth of the game is that it just becomes trying to replicate what's going on in the men's game. And it is a different game. To some levels, it's a different sport. It's definitely a different industry in terms of the finance and the structure of that finance. So I really hope it keeps its identity and keeps that family feel. I mean, an example I give all the time, my mum and sister, my sister's a bit older than me, my mum and sister could not have cared about football ever. They've never given two hoots about the game. And, I'm from Manchester as well, and they're big Manchester United. Well, as a family of Manchester United fans, and the formation of Manchester United's women's team has sparked them to go to the point where my mum and sister are season ticket holders, and they go to Wembley to watch the FA Cup final, 2 years in a row, and they'd probably go every year now. And it's because they love what the game is. It's not just about the tactics on the pitch and those things. They love the whole game. They love the environment. They love the place that they feel. So in terms of where the game's going to go, it's going to grow. It's going to continue to grow. But I just hope it keeps its identity, keeps its passion. I do think it needs to progress a little bit further into judging people, judging managers, judging tactics and stuff. And it's not always about the, this growth element. But at the same time, let's hope and let's work really hard from all sides of it to make sure that the game stays a nice place where people are passionate and people are doing it for the love, and hopefully then also get the financial reward with that.
Yeah, and I think like what you touched on there, especially like there are definitely some elements, aren't there, like you say, that we can take from men's football in terms of being able to grow the women's game. But what sets it apart and what made it grow in the first place was how different it was, and appealing to different kinds of people that maybe don't like the way that men's football is in terms of the culture and the atmosphere. And we always try to emphasize that when we're growing the women's game in general, is that it can still be successful but not be the same as men's football, and that is okay as well. And we can still take certain elements from that and grow that, but we also need to recognize what makes it so different and why that's so important. And I do kind of want to touch on a question that one of our journalists at the team, Lily, asked, and I think it's such an important question. And with you sort of working with different groups, obviously working at college as well, and sort of being in charge of that, but also in terms of being head coach at Hull City Ladies, she sort of asked what role do you believe like grassroots programs sort of play in shaping the future of women's football, and how can we support those, and what can we do in general, and what can people like yourself and other players and everybody involved do to grow that, and what is its importance really in relation to what you said about growing the women's game?
Yeah, I think because of such a small number of professional and semi-professional, there's 72 clubs in the National League, and there's an extra 24 in the top two tiers. That's a very, very low number in comparison to the men's games. When you're talking all the way down to sort of tier 7, 8, you've got clubs playing really big money. So the role of grassroots is a lot bigger in the women's game because of that. They are a lot closer to the top end of the game, and to see its continued growth, to see the numbers, with what we do at Hull City. I can only speak about us, but our ETC program, for example, 140 girls involved in the program. We had an extra 260, involved in our recent trials, in a region that, Hull's not a small place, but it's also not the biggest place in the world. And that's incredible. And that's just the ones who wanted and want to be involved in it, let alone everyone else. So grassroots it is the heartbeat, it is the central point, and it's really important that that's maintained. And I think the FA have recognised that with the way that they've shifted away from the RTC model towards an ETC model, and how players are expected to stay in their grassroots teams, and we grow the grassroots in our region. I think the wider side of it is just making sure that, again, people aren't lost to touch of it. Again, whether that's we have at our games, young girls, young boys as well, it's really important, come down and they love the fact that they meet the girls at the end, that they can get things signed. And, it's really important that that's not lost. We're at tier 3 doing that, but I also see that at tier 1 with Manchester United and Tottenham and Arsenal. They're amazing at that. So I think making sure that people feel connected to the game throughout is key. Because realistically, as a man, if I was to, and I'm at 12 years old or whatever, playing a grassroots team, I've got absolutely no connection to any of my local clubs, local professional clubs. But I think that's very different in the women's game and the girls' game, and that's really important.
I just also want to touch on your role at Hull now. You've moved from a coach to a director of women and girls football. Can you talk to me about that transition?
Yeah, I suppose it depends when this goes out, but that probably changes again in the next week or so. But for me, it's just I'm very lucky that I joined a football club that, look, it had a poor few seasons and got relegated. They hired me as first team manager. My personality is I don't just focus on one thing. I want everything to progress with what we're doing, and I made a lot of noise around how I believe the wider club could develop and should develop. I was very, very lucky that Danny and Rachel and the board really believed in me as a person, and basically created a role to allow me to earn money and earn it as part of my career, playing for the club. So that's probably where that title's come from, and overseeing the wider sort of football development, and whether that be the academy, the first team, some of the administration. I've been really lucky that the club have put sort of full faith in me. I think is probably the big part, and it's hard work, and it's difficult, and it's too much for one person, if we're completely honest. So sort of whether it be sort of little empire or however that looks from there, that's not the right way to do it. But I was very lucky that the club started to make these changes in its own structures to support me. I showed a lot of faith in me there, and hopefully has set us on a good pathway as we then do grow and sort of progress as a club on and off the pitch.
Chris, I just want to sort of briefly go back to the sort of the standalone element you mentioned. Despite being named Hull City Ladies, there's no sort of link or in any form, tenuous or non-tenuous, to the men's side. Sort of how did that decision come about to sort of, do you know, to sort of make that, and also, you know, do you know any of the reasonings behind that?
I don't. I really don't. I mean, I can possibly hazard a guess whether that's the right or wrong thing to do. But Hull City Ladies as a club has been together since 2001. So it's done well. You know, it's formed from an era when the God, my phone keeps going now. Done from an era where again, the game wasn't what it is in 2024 and beyond. So I imagine there's probably links, as many clubs have had those things along the line. I do know that there's always been sort of ongoing discussions between the clubs, but you know, and all due respect to Hull City as well, they want to make sure as a club that they do things right. So if they were to start a women's team, whether that be with us or themselves, they want to make sure they can give it everything it's got, and that takes money and time and resource. So at the moment, yeah, we are a standalone football club in our region, you know, the highest placed team in the East Riding, and when we sort of take that responsibility and that mantle very, very seriously. And at the moment, you know, we'll see going into next year when we come against some massive football clubs with huge resources and budgets and amazing backing. But at the moment, it's not held us back. You know, the things that have held us back haven't been our links to or not to a club. So yeah, we'll see how that progresses.
Also, Daisy, do you have any other questions from also the journalists?
I think we covered that when we asked. So yeah, we talked obviously about the importance of grassroots programs. Obviously, I asked originally what drew you to women's football rather than men's football, but we touched on that at the start.
Yeah, I'm also going to ask, and this would be this would be was it the last one, Chris? But I just want to ask, you've obviously just been promoted. Can you just talk about your plans now for the next season?
Find a magic lamp, I think, is the first one. But no, it's look, last year was an amazing year. It was 2 years in the making. So I joined the summer prior, and the club had said sort of been relegated. So we had to restructure, reanalyze what we were doing, and I had my ideas from a coaching management perspective, but also the club wanted to professionalise and grow on many aspects, and I think we've done that really well. You know, but the work comes down to what the girls did on the pitch, because there was no reason why we should have won that league last year other than their qualities, their work rate, their sort of 100% commitment and passion towards what we've done. And that'll stand us in really good stead going into this season as well. As I touched on before, we've got some massive football clubs that we're playing against this year. Huge names in the women's game on its own, let alone because they're linked to massive men's football clubs. And with that comes a lot of resource. You know, as far as we're aware, there's some professional or close to professional clubs in that National League Premier now. And we've got to then set our challenge and our target to that. We've got to make sure that we do everything we can to be competitive and to make sure that we show ourselves in the best possible light, because that's all we can do at this stage. But saying that, that all sounds really negative. It's really exciting, and it's a challenge that we want to take on. And you know, succeed or fail, we're doing it our way, and that's probably the most exciting and important thing. And there's a really talented group of players here that will take on that challenge regardless.
Chris, just one from me, if you don't mind, guys. I kind of wanted to sort of touch on, for everyone here, I know me, Ed and Daisy have a sort of special connection with women's football, and you kind of alluded to it with your mum and your sister and the story about the FA Cup final, which is touchy subject for me, but we'll gloss over that for the minute. And I know a lot of our listeners will have a special sort of experience with it, and I just kind of wanted to ask, and this in my brain becomes like a thing we ask everyone at the end of every episode: what makes women's football so special to you?
It's a really good question. I think 95% of it is the same. it's a sport that we're all passionate about. We're there to watch a team win. We're there to see how well or badly a manager sets a team up, and the intensity and the work rate and the desire. And the fans, young and old, have bought into the girls because of their passion and their commitment and their skill. So that's what makes the game really special. It's the same things that makes football special everywhere around the world. I think for us at Hull, in our region, Hull as a place is in the middle of nowhere. That you're an hour and a bit before you hit any other bit of civilization, and it's. I hope you're not needing my picture here because the light's just gone off. But it's a region and it's a place that is so passionate about the sport. All sport. Rugby league is obviously huge here, but football itself, the women and girls game here has always had a really solid foundation. Way before the game was anything anywhere else really. And we have a responsibility, and the fans here have a demand that women's football is big here, and that it continues to grow here, and they've got a place to engage with it. And they've jumped in 110%. So I think our responsibility and our love for the sport and in this region comes down to its historic roots, but also its place within society and the community. And then you couple that with, at the end of the day, we're all here to compete and try and do very well. So that all pieces together quite nicely, I think.
Really, really appreciate that, Chris, having you on. And we also wish you all the best for also next season.
No, really appreciate you having me on. Best of luck with everything with it, because it's a fantastic project, and I look forward to keeping my eye out along it all as well. So yeah, best of luck.